I'm here at SMPTE with Howard Lukk, and obviously because I'm talking about standards, these standards typically come from SMPTE, so I have to come here and talk to SMPTE, of course. And Howard Lukk's going to help us, and we're going to talk to him about how these SMPTEs help the industry, where they come from, and other aspects of how, you know, it's an important part of the future of these new digital workflows, and SMPTE starting to contribute to them extensively. Now we're going to the more digital side. Now, I was discussing with you before, Howard, how now that we're all digital, and the digital world has been, you know, doing workflows, snowflake workflows as it's commonly called, and everyone's been trying to do the best with all the new technology as it comes down the pipe. But there has to be some sort of control mechanism to sort of get the best of all these technologies, bring them together so we can move forward in a more efficient way. And SMPTE is here to do that. And would you agree with that? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, no, I certainly agree with that. So when technology first comes into the marketplace, generally it's proprietary information and it's proprietary companies that launch in with a new technology, which is fantastic. But after a while, you start to have competing technologies in the same kind of arena, and that becomes very, very troublesome in the fact that if you want interoperability between those systems, it just doesn't work.
That's right.
So that's where standardization in SMPTE really comes into play, because it aims to standardize workflows and processes so that there can be interchange between different manufacturers and different equipment. And so that's really, I think, the biggest part of standardization. It kind of levels that playing field so that everybody can play in the same playing field, and then it's up to the marketplace to choose the best product that supports that standard.
Yeah, that's true, and I think SMPTE does a good job at trying to establish that for their standards. So very much you need to, you know, if you're in this industry and you're in production, you need to take note of what SMPTE is up to.
Right. And
it's one of my messages of today's coverage is that with all these new standards coming out and emerging at the moment, like VC5, IMF, immersive audio, more stuff coming along in high dynamic range, I'm talking about all the buzzwords at the show this year. And SMPTE's standing behind these buzzwords. So, you know, we'll talk a bit more about Life Without SMPTE at the end of the video.
Sure, absolutely.
But it's an important note. But let's talk about some of these standards, and I just get a comment on you where you think they're going to move the industry, like VC5, which is a ProRes or DNX HT equivalent.
Right. So we've got these new compression formats, and they kind of seem to come out like almost every day these days. So everybody has a different format and a format of choice. VC5 was brought to standards after, you know, we've got VC1 and VC3. VC2 I'm not so sure about somewhere, that I don't know exactly what that is. But these are compression formats basically being standard by SMPTE. The good part about that is then people know how to build encoders and decoders to operate with these new compression standards. And, you know, compression standards will keep coming as we go. We'll get better mathematical algorithms, we'll get better ways to compress, we'll understand the human visual system better. So compression never stands still, if you will. But you do need to put a stake in the ground from time to time so we can actually get the work done. Because you can't get the work done just within a single closed ecosystem anymore.
Right. Yes,
it just doesn't happen. There's too many things going on and too many different disparate systems, and so standards kind of crosses that to make sure that we can actually interoperate that stuff.
Or in my opinion, for example, for example, Apple is very dominant in the post industries.
Yes, yeah, with the ProRes, exactly.
That's right, specifically for ProRes. But Apple, as a company, is not really focused on professional equipment.
Right.
They do have the Mac Pro, but you can buy a PC-based computer running Windows or Linux on it that is double the speed, double the GPU for not a lot more.
Yeah.
And if we are stuck in the Mac world, and if Mac aren't ready to expand into those markets, but the industry needs to move into those markets, especially with 4K, this is where the problems come, and this is where something like VC5 should allow us to move forward over these problems.
Right, absolutely. So Apple has been traditionally a closed ecosystem.
Yes,
right. You know, you buy all Apple gear, it works wonderfully between all the Apple stuff. The minute you try to get outside of that, you know, it can be complicated.
That's right.
Let's just put it that way. So, you know, the fact that ProRes has never been an official standard has been kind of a problem. A lot of the people in the professional, you know, movie making and broadcast industry are very hesitant to put a lot of money into equipment that they're going to base all their workflows on something that's not kind of standardized.
That's right.
It's a choice you can make, but it could be 2 years down the road and the company's out of business, they don't do anything anymore.
It has, in my opinion, as being a business owner, it has risk.
Yeah, a lot of risk involved.
That's right, and you want to mitigate that risk by selecting the right formats and standards to move you forward.
Exactly, because if you're working based upon a standard, then you're bound to have multiple manufacturers that support that standard. So if one manufacturer for some reason decides to get out of the business or change the way they do things, you do have other options. So at least you're not stuck with an old or dying type of a format that goes on. So this is really the best benefit, I think, of standards as it goes along.
That's right. Now we'll jump into another one.
Sure.
Another big standard coming along the pipe in my book is IMF. The problem with IMF, from my perspective, it's not a simple thing. It does a lot, so it's hard to explain.
Yeah.
Like it'd take 15 minutes to scratch the surface of what IMF is. It's like a nirvana that you don't know you want to go to until you've been there.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with IMF, and it's one of the reasons I want to talk about it and socialise it here today, because you need to have a look. You need to keep your eye on it and see where it's going to go, because it will, in the era today of a million different size screens, everything's going to every phone, tablets, TVs, that all equals a proliferation of masters.
Yeah, absolutely. And many different masters that you need from many different distribution systems.
Right.
A couple of years back, and not so long ago, we had basically, home video on VHS, for example, and we had the movie theaters, and that was pretty much it for cinema.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I'm not going to name all of them because there's too many to name. We have just a wild proliferation of distribution avenues for your movie. And IMF is one of the things that tries to get ahead of the proliferation of all these different types of file formats. So being one of the ones that was there at the very first part of IMF, we really took what we learned from digital cinema and the way we made digital cinema packages and used that same conceptual idea for for a master for all of the rest of the distributions you have to have, so that you can basically keep one master file format that then can be translated pretty much in real time to any of the other distributions that crop up, or any distributions in the future for that matter. So that's kind of the basis of IMF. It is complicated, it's a large toolbox. Most people don't need to use everything in the IMF toolbox.
That's right.
So you can bridge a little bit in the surface, find out what it's about, and then select those parts of IMF that work for you.
That's right.
And so, yes, it can be complicated if you want to know everything about IMF all the way through, but it is the best thing I think about IMF, again, it's a standardized file format that we can now interchange between people. When we first got into digital and had the file formats, there's file formats all over the place. And none of them were consistent. So I could send you a file and you would say, well, I don't know what to do with it, I can't read this one. I'll try to send you another one, well, I can't read that one. And finally, by the time I send you the fifth one, you can read it. So this is one of those things that IMF tries to get rid of it.
That's right. And I'd just like to say, as someone who has studied, I have a good understanding of IMF, and has a good understanding of people who use post tools. It might take a while for IMF to actually get to you, because what I see happening is IMF is maturing as a standard, but it then has to mature as the post tools companies produce tools suitable for its clients into their tool set. And each company may bring forward a certain way of looking at IMF's toolset. This is only my impression at this stage, because it's very early, but it's definitely, because it can do a lot better, it can do a lot of really good things. So let's move on.
Sure.
Immersive audio is coming down like a truck.
Oh yeah, like a big fast truck barreling down at all of us. Yeah, absolutely.
And I must admit, at the Cinema Summit, fantastic this year. It's a really good conference if you want to get up to date, so try and come to it. It's sponsored by SMPTE. They're always the best and the leading edge information if you want to know what's going on with these standards. Usually surfaces at the Cinema Summit. And I found it very interesting this year in terms of immersive audio as a standard. It's coming along quite well.
Yeah, it's kind of, first, usually in the process, just to give you a little bit of background, we start with the study group first, and the study group goes out and studies what's out there in the field and writes a study group report. And then after that, it usually indicates those areas that need standardization or those areas that should just be left to the marketplace that don't need standardization. And it was really through the study report that was done at SMPTE, it was really recognized that yes, immersive audio is here, it's coming fast, there's a couple of different competing systems and we need to standardize across that so that theater owners wouldn't have to have every single different system. If we go back in time, it still happens that you have DTS audio, you had Dolby audio, you know, SDDS and all those types, and you had to support each one of those systems in the cinema.
That's right.
So in order to try not to repeat that again,
that's right,
we're trying to get ahead of the curve and get standardization around this immersive audio subject.
That's right.
It's a little difficult because of course you've got competing interests and you know, companies that want to get ahead of the competition and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So
and it was interesting at the show with Brian Vesser talking about it, and you had the mixer from a big mixing house there. I forget, was it from Skywalker Ranch? I'm not sure.
Oh, Skywalker Ranch, yeah, exactly.
And you can definitely see two competing interests, very much the art side competing with the science side.
Right.
And I found it very interesting because see that's a big battle with standardization and art. SMPTE is about it's about sciences, working out, measuring everything, making sure everything is right, we all can get to the same place through documentation, and so we're all working on the same page. While art is, it's more subjective, and
absolutely.
And that marriage alone I found very interesting, and I'm keen to see how that plays out, I'm telling you.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. I mean, SMPTE makes standardization for products. It doesn't get involved with art.
Yeah.
It's up to the creative community, once they get a hold of these things, to create the art from the basic foundations that we've applied with the standards. So, you know, immersive audio is relatively new when you talk about all the multi-channels that can be in the cinema, and it's a little overwhelming for a creative person at first to kind of get your head wrapped about what can I do with this and what's going to be distracting to the audience versus what actually is going to be helping to tell the story.
I agree with you. Like my opinion on this is I can understand the mixer's rationale to his stepping back and being a bit nervous about all this. But there's competing interests, like you said. Again, it falls back to the plethora of masters and Atmos mix, Oro mix, and putting them all together and just expand.
And how do you, again, solve for all the distributions? Especially for a studio. A studio has to wrestle with this. You know, it's tough enough when you get to the end of the movie in production anyway, and the mix is the last thing you're doing. And when you have to add on other multiple mixes on top of that, it gets to be both an economic challenge and a time challenge.
That's the economic challenge. That's my biggest concern.
is a big problem with that. So and you don't want a time crunch creative process. You know, you end up compromising way too much when you do that. So it's really a balance of how much can I take advantage of this and how much can we get the competing systems very close together so I can translate across each one of these systems. You know, as a director creating a product and a content, you know, our goal is to make sure that it goes across every system as best as it can. Because we want the audience to see the same presentation that we got to see at the studio and in the fine room. So this is where it takes a lot of kind of arm-twisting hallway conversations, a lot of kind of getting competing interests in the same room to compromise in some aspects on their stuff to get a basic standard so that we can move forward with this stuff.
That's right. Pretty much towards the end, I wanted to mention what's the video here? What was it called? Life Without SMPTE?
There's Life Without SMPTE, that's one, but I'm also working on a documentary about the 100 years of SMPTE.
Yes, I know.
So, yeah, moving images.
I obviously contributed to your Indiegogo.
Yes, thank you very much.
Can't wait to see that. And it showed us little...
a sizzle piece,
A sizzle piece at the Cinema Summit was very good. I really liked that.
Thank you.
But what I wanted to talk about is that in the... To the people out there, your presentation about Life Without SMPTE is you talk about time code, which is a very tactile, like people understand it, they see it, they understand it, they can sort of touch it out of all the perceptual ideas that come out of SMPTE. But that just scratches the surface in my opinion. And like VC5, like there's a lot of other standards like the B-chain work, and so we can, there's a lot of work being done to try and figure out how to measure the result of presentations as they are presented. Like,
right. So what's the screen luminance, for example,
screen
that comes
luminance.
off the screen luminance? So what's the reference level in the audio in the theater?
That's
things
exactly
like that.
right. Yeah. And these are exceptionally important if you want to make sure when you go to the cinema you see a premium result. So you have to thank SMPTE for that, right?
Yeah.
Remember that. Thank them for it.
And it's not just one person; it's a whole host of people.
It's an army of people to do
Army of people, and a global army as that as well.
That's right. So. And so, you know, if you can help, if you're interested in this technology at all, I would encourage you to join SMPTE. You get some really good technical. If you're technical at all, like I am, you get some really good technical. Every quarter, I think I get a.
Yeah.
And I
read the journal.
I read the journal. There's usually a lot of stuff's over my head but I sit there and think, you know, you can start to realise how much work goes into this. Like literally thousands of man years, I imagine, goes into this, and a lot of this is donated by individuals and companies.
Yeah, and companies and people do this as a volunteer basis. Because people are not paid actually to do SMPTE standard works. That's right. I've done it for over 10 years, and yes, I've had companies support me in that effort, but you know, everybody's there as a volunteer basis. So, and it's a great group of people. They do fantastic work. We argue like crazy. It's almost like being in lobbying Congress, but at the end, I think the product speaks for itself.
All right, thank you, Howard.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
It's good to speak to you too.
Great,
and this is CineTechGeek NAB 2015 at the SMPTE booth. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.
Thank you.